Enter the world of the supernatural with Paranormal M, where every story is a puzzle waiting to be solved. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications, and join us on our quest for the truth behind the unexplained. Get ready to be amazed. Ask Reddit. When my friend and I were teenagers, we used to play with a Ouija board in this historically haunted, popular town where we both worked. We'd just sit in the middle of the garden area, or in our car in one of the large parking lots. I trust her implicitly, and she trusts me, so neither of us would do something to mess with the other. And usually the board is just gibberish. We'd get bored and do something else. This one night, we're talking to a man named Alan. It was weirdly intense. I think we sat there for 2 hours just asking questions. But oddly not creeped out. I've had some creepy stuff occur using them when I was younger, like 13 or so. And I always got that gut-sinking feeling. But this time it felt happy and weird. Anyway, she kind of still has a curfew. We were 19 and in a local college, so both of us live at home. So we leave around 11 to get her home by 12. And about 30 or 40 minutes from this town, we stop in our nice, safe little area to get gas and drinks. That's before she has to get home. She's trailing behind me, and I walk in first to grab the drinks. They're the ones by the door, and there's a nice-looking guy around our age. Maybe up to really early 20s. And immediately comes up to me. Thought he worked there at first. He asks if I want to hang out and come to a party with him on the weekend. I'm kind of laughing and just saying, "No thanks, we're going away this weekend. We can't." Right as my friend walks in. I'm not an idiot and not going off to party with a stranger as a teen, but he's very nice and seems genuine. Trying to get us to hang out with him, and, 2 hour, that's very nice, but no thank yous. He then finally says, "What if you guys change your mind? My name is Alan. You both know where I'll be." Smiles, stares at us for a few seconds, then walks out. My whole body shivered, and I looked back and my friend's jaw is practically on the floor. Swing around to see where he is. Like stop him or keep talking or something, and he's just gone. There's a pretty open road in front of the store and houses a bit back behind the gas station. But he went out toward the road, and the houses have fairly long open yards separating them from the store. Neither of us really say anything, yet we just go up to the guy working at the gas station to pay, and he has a weird look on his face and says, "Sorry if he was bothering you ladies." I didn't even hear him come in. The guy working there had walked out from the back about halfway through our short conversation when he heard the door open when I came in. At this point, I can tell my friend is in shock, and my mind's racing. So I just say forget it to the gas, pay for our drinks quickly, and get back in the car instead of pumping gas. We drove up and down the street, and then we had heard, or rather, we head to our house after a few minutes. But we couldn't see a man walking anywhere. It was dead outside. It was so weird. The whole time he spoke to us, it was like he knew us. He had this little smirk on his face, like he knew something that we didn't. It was so strange. I had gone my whole life not knowing anybody named Alan spelled with an E or an A. And it's just a coincidence of that happening on the same night of the guy making a beeline to speak with us. It was so odd. But even more odd was the fact that I wasn't scared. And I usually am sensitive to weird stuff. And I'm definitely alert with strangers approaching me at night. So the fact that it was more of a can't believe this happened feeling and not a run for your life feeling was also strange. We talked about that for a while when we'd get on the subject of what do you believe in type supernatural stuff. The whole thing was so strange and still don't know what to make of it. Can anyone explain this? A couple of weeks ago I went camping with my boyfriend, my mom, and my mom's boyfriend. As soon as we got to the campsite, I felt as though something was off. I felt like I was a stranger entering someone else's home. Because of these feelings, neither me nor my boyfriend could sleep the 2 nights we spent there. The first night was weird. When my mom and I went to bed early, I swore I felt something touch the place underneath me. The camper we were in pops out on both ends. That's for 2 places to sleep that are a few feet off the ground. I also know it wasn't anybody I was with, because the guys were talking over the fire and about 10 yards away. My mom was on the opposite side of the camper. All throughout the night, I kept waking up with a feeling of dread. Then, as it was beginning to become lighter, I woke up to an alarm. It was crystal clear, and I could even feel the vibration from the phone. In fact, it was the Sencha alarm on iPhones. I almost got up to turn it off, but instead I decided to just try to ignore it and go back to sleep so I didn't wake everybody up. I was the only one awake at this point. Later, after we had all gotten up, we were getting ready for breakfast. I mentioned the alarm. My mom said something along the lines of, "What alarm?" Her and my boyfriend looked at me with confused expressions, and then I said, "What do you mean, what alarm?" You or him must have said it. I even picked out the sound I heard, but at that point they didn't believe me and looked at me like I was crazy. The rest of my time there was just feeling weird, and I just wanted to leave. I usually love the outdoors and the mountains. They feel like home to me. I don't know if anybody will ever read this, but I thought it was worth a shot, and try and reach. Consider yourself caught. My hearing aids can pick up ghost voices. So this weird thing has been happening. Just got my hearing aids fixed and adjusted. I've been wearing them all day. Then tonight around 1 a.m. I start hearing voices. It's mainly this really creepy woman's voice. Thought it was something else playing, like a YouTube video on a forgotten tab or something of the like, but it's not coming from my headphones or any noticeable location like a laptop or a phone. And the thing is, my hearing aids are an old model. They don't have Bluetooth capability, wireless links, and nothing. All they do, and all they can do, is amplify the sounds in my environment. So where the heck is this creepy woman's voice coming from? It's really starting to freak me out. Has anybody heard of anything like this happening? Additional note. Whenever it happens, all other sounds cuts out, like the sounds of the fan or air conditioning, etc., and they suddenly just cut out, very noticeably, because I can't hear those sounds without the hearing aids. And these sounds become replaced by absolute silence and this woman's voice. I know what happened to Marjorie West. It's been a few years since one of the craziest experiences I've ever had, and I think it's time to share it. I hadn't heard of this case before this experience, and I'm going to tell you about it. I feel like it's also important to note that I've never seen anything like this before, or since this incident. My friend, a 28-year-old female, and I, a 26-year-old female, were driving through the middle of farmland in northeastern Pennsylvania. We were listening to music, having a conversation about something totally normal. That's when all of a sudden I blurted out, "There's a dead body over there," looking across a field to the woods. I've absolutely no idea where that came from, and there was no thought before the words came out. The words just came out of my mouth. My friend looked at me incredulously, and she said, "What?" That's when I felt the goosebumps start on the back of my neck. They traveled up and around my head and down through my shoulders to the rest of my body. I could feel in that moment that someone was sitting in the middle of the back row of my car. Look at my friend, we made eye contact. and I knew she felt this presence too. That's when the tears started. They flowed from my eyes quickly, and I know they weren't really my tears. Whoever was in the back seat was so scared and so incredibly sad, and I could feel it in my entire body. I said, "There's someone in the back seat," my friend said. "I know." We drove in silence for the next 5 minutes until we got back to the house. In the silence, I saw a flash of dirty strawberry blonde hair. It was curly, but the curls were loose and falling out. I saw a flash of dirty blue fabric. I didn't stop crying. When we got back to the house, we walked to the front porch. I was so shaken that I couldn't remember the code for the front door. I turned to look at my friend, and standing beside us was a little girl. She was small. I guessed 3 or 4. She had on a dirty light blue dress with frilly sleeves. Her hair was curly and strawberry blonde, but it was messy and dirty. I could only see one side of her face, but it was decomposing badly. I didn't take my eyes off this girl, and I said to my friend, "Do you see that too?" She said, "Yeah, I see her." I shut my eyes, turned around, and all I could do was repeat, "I don't want this, I don't want to see this," over and over. I finally unlocked the door and we stumbled inside. Both shook. My friend and I sat in the kitchen table in silence for a moment. Then we recounted everything that we saw and felt. We saw the same things. We felt the same things. As we were compiling details, I had an idea. I pulled up the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the NCMEC database on my phone. I entered Pennsylvania as the location, 3 to 5 for age missing, female, white, red hair. As I was scrolling, my friend said, "She went missing a long time ago, in the 30s, maybe 40s. So I added those parameters to the search. I continued to scroll and there weren't any results left. My friend said, "Her name starts with an M, and it's longer, an older name, maybe Margaret or..." That's when I found her profile, Marjorie. My friend lit up and said, "Yes!" Her name was Marjorie West. Showed her the picture of the girl that we just saw standing on the porch. Marjorie West was 4 years old when she went missing from White Gravel, Pennsylvania on May 8, 1938. I was a skeptic for most of my life. I guess I still am in most cases. But I've experienced things that I can't really explain away by logic. While I've felt presences before and since, Marjorie West is still to this day the only spirit I've ever seen. My friend has seen a few throughout her life, but more often she hears them. This is what Marjorie told her. Marjorie was taken by a bad man. She was scared, and she wanted her mom. We believe that bad man drove Marjorie across the state. He killed her and dumped her body in the woods in what was, and still kind of is, the middle of nowhere. Now this is what we told Marjorie. We told her we were sorry for what happened to her, and we told her that she could stay in my family's property. It's a peaceful place, and my friend and I felt each other's peaceful presences on the farm, so she wouldn't be alone anymore. It seems there are a few theories out there about what happened to Marjorie West. You may believe in the paranormal, you may not, but I know what we saw and what we felt, and I know what happened to Marjorie West. Two odd experiences that I've had. I was hoping some of you all could shine some light on some situations I have found myself in. I'm a skeptical believer of these things, a doubting Thomas type. Never heard of that one. However, as a kid, I did used to see shadow people all the time, and I've heard strange things. Like what sounded like a parent's voice calling me from downstairs even though my parent was sitting right next to me upstairs. Apologies for grammar. It's okay. I'm on a mobile and I'm typing really fast. Sorry if this sounds fake. I swear it happened and I'm seriously curious about this. Sorry if this is the wrong flair. When I was in college a few years back, I had a strange encounter in my dorm room. My roommate was in the room as well. It was late and I was sleeping soundly. That's when I randomly woke up. I don't know why, but I sat up and at the foot of my bed in the pitch dark was a man. He was completely shadowy with glowing red eyes just sitting and staring at me. I remember locking eyes with him for a split second and giving a weak scream. I hid underneath my blankets. Because that'll protect you from supernatural entities. I waited a few moments before peeking out from beneath the blankets. He was still there, staring. I don't remember what happened after that. I just fell back asleep with my head underneath the blankets. My roommate said that she didn't hear me scream. Maybe hiding under the blankets does help. I talked to some of my friends about it. They said I must have been dreaming, but I don't think so. I felt wide awake after locking my eyes with that entity. My heart was racing so fast. What was that thing? Was it a hat man? Has anybody else experienced this? And should I be concerned? A few years later, this is completely unrelated by the way, I was visiting an old cemetery in Richmond, Virginia. I came across a grave, and it was covered evil eye necklaces. It had rose quartz crystals and the like. I was intrigued, went to take a closer look. There was a jar at the foot of the grave with a picture of a lady inside and a bunch of broken mirror shards. I don't remember if I heard the whispering before or after I noticed the jar, but I remember hearing whispering near my ear, of voices speaking rapidly. I was alone in this part of the cemetery, but my dumbass for some reason said, "Hello, anybody there?" And the whispering got closer for some reason. I don't ever touch things in cemeteries. I felt compelled to touch this jar though, and stranger still, despite how terrifying the situation was, I couldn't bring myself to feel afraid. My brain was screaming for me to run, but my heart and body were just perfectly calm. I had to force myself to run, and it felt like I was running in a dream. The grave had this magnetism to it, and the air felt pressurized. As I ran, my foot started hurting like I sprained it. Didn't stop hurting until I made it back to my car and drove home. You're writing even on your phone, fast. Still pretty good, man. Strange activities / missing items. I'll give an example starting with the very first occurrence, according to my mom. She says when I was a kid, she was in my room cleaning up toys from the day when all of a sudden she heard and felt a loud snap right in front of her face. And then suddenly a small purple plastic ring fell onto the floor in front of her. She explains that she not only saw it appear in front of her, but she felt a puff of air from it appearing when she looked around and there wasn't anybody, or anywhere where it could have fallen from. My mother's an atheist and has always been a big science buff, but even she admits she can't explain this. The second occurrence is when my mother saw a full-body apparition walk into my sister's room. She thought it was my dad and walked over to say hi, but when she got there, it was only my sister playing in a room by herself. My mom asked her if somebody had walked in, to which she replied no. Nobody had been there, walked in at all. Strange. The third occurrence is where things start to get really weird. Way later on in life, when me and my sister are now about teenagers, we're in our final years of trick-or-treating. We were getting ready to head out the door when my sister looked at our fish tank and asked, "Hey, where's our fish midnight?" They looked all around the tank and literally couldn't find this dang fish. In the end, we decided to just do our stuff for the night and look for her the next day. We honestly figured she was just hiding somewhere. She was a decent-sized fish. a black moor goldfish in a larger tank than a golf ball, but still capable of ducking behind things and going inside apparatuses in the tank. The next day we decided to clean the whole tank and carefully removed all of our living fish and cleaned the tank top to bottom. No fish, no bones either. This was very perplexing. It's also worth mentioning that we have 2 dogs, and our next immediate fear was perhaps she jumped out of the tank and they ate her. This really wasn't possible, though, as the water in the tank was too low, and it had a lid on top of it. There was no space except for the small crack where the filter was. And so to check, we pulled the shelf that the tank sat on away from the wall, and there wasn't anything behind it either. I'm not kidding when I say we searched everywhere for this fish. She's literally missing, just gone all of a sudden. The 4th occurrence, and sort of most of the others fall in line with the 3rd one where things go randomly missing. My sister and I had some chocolates for Valentine's Day given to us by our parents as a small gift. It was before school, so we decided to just leave them at home and eat them when we got back. My parents both work away from home, so the first time anybody had been home that day was when my dad picked me and my sister up from school and brought us home. When we got back, the lid was still on perfectly, and she left it before, but when she opened it, 3 of the 5 were missing. She hadn't eaten any before school, and nobody was home after she left. Everybody knew that they were hers, and also knew not to touch them. It was just sort of unspoken, I don't know. But also, nobody was home. So who ate the chocolate and where'd they go? The 5th occurrence is pretty much the same as the last 2. My sister was looking for her glasses, couldn't find them in the house, and according to her, she'd set them down on the desk just minutes ago. Then looked back and they were gone. We searched high and low, and we finally were just kind of relenting and guess she'd left them in the car or something like that. The first time I went to check, I saw nothing in the car. I checked everything. Glove compartment, little nooks and crannies in the car, everywhere. My eyes scanned every inch of that car. After a few hours of still not finding them, my sister decides she's going to check the car one last time. First of all, they were there, and second of all, they were sitting in the middle of the passenger seat like they'd been placed there. There's absolutely no way I searched that whole car and didn't see them sitting right there on that seat. I'm so certain of this. The 6th and final occurrence I'm going to talk about happened to my father. He says he was sweeping the garage and he set the dustpan down on a ledge to pick up a stray penny on the ground. When he bent back up, the dustpan was gone. He searched the entire garage and it was nowhere to be found. A giant bright white dustpan that snaps into a broom. How does that go missing? He's adamant that all he did was set it down and bend over to pick something up. He didn't throw it away or do anything weird or put it in a strange place. All he did was set it down for a second so he could pick it back up when he stood again. But alas, it was totally gone. Many more occurrences have happened, very similar to the last 4. Things go missing in our home all the time. We aren't really sure where they go. I've had a few friends say that it sounds like the Fae playing a prank on us. But if that's the case, what was the full-body apparition my mom saw? And if ghosts or spirits aren't corporeal enough to genuinely steal things, then what was this? We've just started referring to it as the void, because our stuff sometimes gets returned to us. But other times it just goes missing forever and we never get it back. It just simply falls into the void. I've been holding on to these stories forever because I genuinely think people might assume we're having some sort of shared delusion or something. We're not. We're all very rational, logical science people, but this is downright strange. I'm curious to see what other people have to say. I know this is long, and I thank whoever took the time to read this. You're welcome. I want answers, even if they're supernatural ones. Have a lovely day. I I want some thoughts about something that happened the spring before last. This happened to me in the spring of 2022. I shared it around with friends and family, but I haven't been on Reddit in a while. Forgot about this community until now. Growing up, I always believed in the paranormal and the supernatural, but all of my experiences, except for a few, could just be chalked up to my imagination. In recent years, while I still do believe in ghosts, like I said, I didn't have experiences to myself. Starting to realize that a lot of the things I saw in my family's house when I was a kid was just simple stuff, like thinking dust in my eyes was ghost orbs. Stupid, I know. In this story, I'm going to be frank with you. This happened about a year and a half ago. The details can change as I share the story again and again, so I want to be clear with what I know as a fact, and what I kind of remember happening. But it could also be a false memory that exaggerates the story. I want to be completely honest about the fact that I don't remember this all perfectly. Also, I don't care if you don't believe me. This was enough evidence to make me 100% believe in ghosts. And I don't care if people think I'm lying. But I am very interested if there is a way to debunk this or a different line of thinking that I didn't yet think about. Thank you. Back in the spring of 2022, I was alone in my college dorm. I was doing some homework. That's when I heard a noise, which caused me to look at the door and take my AirPod out. I both heard and saw, I might not have actually seen it though, the doorknob on my door rattling. I ran to it, peeked out the peephole into the hallway of the dorm where I didn't see anyone. At this point, I honestly just thought it was a friend of my roommate trying to be funny and not really, realizing that he was home at the time. Went back to my homework, and the entire quick encounter, like not even 5 seconds long, left my thoughts. That evening, I drove an hour back to my parents' home for a family dinner. I had a great time. After dinner, we were all around the couch. I was chatting with my siblings. I happened to be situated in front of the front door, and the doorknob started to rattle. Something that I could both see and hear. Family was laughing, having fun. I started yelling as if somebody could hear it. And they could. After a few seconds, it stopped. I opened the door and looked outside. No one was there, which isn't surprising for a suburban street at like 8 at night. I went back to talking with my family. Usually when you yell, somebody can hear it. A little bit confused, but moving on. I still don't think I even remembered the earlier encounter until after a lot of family left. I got totally freaked out. Not only was there a ghost, but it had followed me from my college to my parents' house an hour drive away. That night I was staying with my parents there. I was properly terrified laying in my bed, and I will be completely honest and say the next part may have been of a dream. I was very tired, but I wanted to say it because in my memory it actually happened. I had a bedside lamp on, and it was moving to go turn it off to fall asleep. I turned it off and I got like 6 inches away. I then did the child thing of getting fully under the covers and going to sleep. Abrupt ending. Possibly a skinwalker. I'm not really sure what I saw that night. So I had an incident around 12 hours ago. Oops, years. 12 years ago. I was with an old buddy of mine in his old community. The community, I believe, was an Indian reservation. It was nighttime. We went for a walk down dirt road. The whole community was a trailer park home area, except for a few houses there. As we walked down the road, we came near this one house with an outside light on that had chickens and dogs. Mind you, my buddies knew to this area pretty well. As we were walking, we hear the dogs making weird noises, and from what he said, after we heard the noise, my buddy looked at me and told me to run back to his house. So of course I ran with him. As we were running, I stopped running out of shock. Shock from what I had seen right in front of me. It was a dark, cloaked figure with a long black hair, a mask like a samurai face. Yes, like those masks they have with the long teeth sticking out of their mouth, but it was an actual face. It was staring straight at me. I was so damn scared I couldn't move. And this lasted 5 seconds and it floated into the woods. Yes, it wasn't standing on the ground. It was floating. I remember this event with every single small detail after all these years. And no, I wasn't high on anything or drunk. I was completely sober and terrified. If anybody has an idea on what I saw that night, I would really appreciate it. Please don't comment if you're going to be messed up. I'm very serious about this. And I'm just looking for answers. A random one-off encounter. In the summer of 2021, during the height of the COVID-19 mess, I decided to build a garage and workshop at the bottom of the garden. I hired a mini digger to dig most of the footings out, ready for the concrete pour. I remember my son, who was almost 13 at the time and was helping me prepare the footings. Found some old lady's cosmetics in the trench that we had dug. We were pretty surprised, and they were in good condition, which I remember thinking was an odd find, especially as I'd lived in the house since 2011, and it was my father's house before that, and he had lived there alone since '86. Anyway, I enlisted the help of a friend to help with the pour and leveling out of the concrete. We finished. I quickly dropped him off at his place and returned back home to find my son mopping the kitchen dining room floor as we had made a bit of a mess going back and forth through the garden. I paused for a minute. I wanted to take in how much of a help he'd been all morning. It's usually hard getting him off his Xbox. I said to him, "Shall we have a cup of tea and some leftover birthday cake?" as it had been my birthday a few days earlier. While we were waiting for the kettle to boil, we began eating the cake and having a little joke how his slice was bigger than mine. Then suddenly his face dropped from one of laughter to one of complete shock and horror. He even spat out the cake that was in his mouth, and he was looking toward the patio doors in the garden beyond, which obviously made me look too. Seeing nothing, I asked my son what's the matter. He slowly raised his finger, pointing at the open patio door. It was like he tried to speak, but couldn't. I said to him, "There's nothing there." At which point his face dropped even more. Then he shouted, "It's gone upstairs." The stairway runs from the kitchen/diner to the first floor. Then almost immediately afterwards, he starts windmill punching what seems to be nothing but thin air. My mind was working overtime and coming up with answers. All I could think to do was pick up my son and take him to the living room, place him on the couch, and sit him down next to me. He immediately frantically picked up the couch throw and pulled it over his face while sobbing. Thought he was going to throw the couch. Every corner of the room pulled it back over his head. At one point he shouted, "It's there, right in front of you." Again, I couldn't see anything, kept saying, "It's got no eyes, but it can see me." With the throw covering his head, he put his hands over his ears and kept shouting, "Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up," over and over. I said, "I'm not saying anything." And he replied, "I'm not talking to you." He then asked me where I was, because there was somebody sat on either side of him. I confirmed that I was sat to his right, and I held his hand. A few seconds later, he shouted, "It's got my leg!" My son's left leg shot up into the air, and I grabbed him by the waist. Had to use all my strength to keep hold of him. It was at this point I became convinced that there was something there that I couldn't see. This jostling lasted about 10 seconds or so before my son was let go. I reached for my phone from the coffee table to call my older brother who lives nearby, and it was the most religious of our immediate family. I felt like it was slapped out of my hand and slid across the room. I retrieved it and made the call to my brother, asking him to come around immediately. Quickly explained what was going on. My son had resumed covering his face with a throw, covering his ears, and continued repeatedly saying things like, "Shut up," and "No. It's not true." Just as I heard my brother's car pull up outside, my son pulled the throw away from his face and said with some relief that he's going now. He's gone. After everything had calmed down, I asked my son what it was saying to him. He wouldn't tell me initially, but when I wasn't in the room, he told his uncle. Apparently it was talking about me, saying that I was a bad father and I wasn't his real dad, and that he was indeed his real dad. My son, unsurprisingly, later spent the evening at his mother's, who lives on the other side of town. But later that night, as I was in bed, I received loads of texts and calls from him saying that the thing was back and he could hear it. He was terrified on the phone, but there wasn't much I could do at the time to try to reassure him. Me and his mother had been estranged for years. I received a bit of abuse from her on the phone as I was forced to call her and ask her to go upstairs to check on her son that was calling me, asking for help in a situation where I couldn't. Thankfully, after that, we haven't had any repeat ghostly drama. Me and my son have talked about it in the months following, and he's gotten older. He won't be drawn into conversation about it, but I am convinced that we disturbed something during the excavation works that led to this terrible episode. What did I see? So I've always been seeing strange things, and I've been drawn to the paranormal. I never investigated it too much because of watching the shows. I knew I saw things differently, though. My daughter and I had to go take care of her at her home because she was so sick. She was getting up there. We were supposed to stay for 6 months. I know people won't believe me and think I'm lying, but I don't care. My papa died in mid-2000s. He stays there. It's never bothered me because I know him, and the worst-case basis, I'll sort of have him pulling on my toe while I'm sleeping. One night while my daughter and I were sleeping in the same bed, I wasn't quite asleep yet. I was trying to get there. The door to our room opened up, and I had immediate chills, and I was scared. It was not something I feel a lot, even with the strange things I see full-on live and in-person creatures. He looked like a cross between a skeleton and an alien, but with like neon flames coming off of his arms and skull. I apologize, I'm not a writer. I'm describing it the best I can. I was so terrified I couldn't move, and I'm embarrassed too because I was so scared that I didn't know how to save my kid. Pulled the covers over my head and hid like a toddler. I could still see him in my mind, though. After what felt like 15 minutes, but was probably 30 seconds, it left. I've never seen it again, and I had to leave my mom's house and arrange different care. I couldn't stay there anymore. Does anybody know what it could be that I've seen? Stuck between elemental or alien. I get skeptics who'll come for me, but it took a lot for me to write this because I know what I'll get in return. It was just honestly the most terrifying moment of my life, and I've been through some shit. Please help me. I've been having sleep paralysis issues for a long time, like since I was little. I would often have nightmares that led to sleep paralysis. I don't think my sleep paralysis is a normal kind. Like I think something paranormal is why this is happening to me. When I search the things I've experienced on Google, nothing really pops up that's useful. So I've decided after waking from yet another experience, I think it was the most horrifying experience I've ever had. I was going to post it on Reddit, try to get some answers since you guys seem to know everything. This all started when I was about 5. I was playing dress-up alone in my room. Then suddenly my soccer ball rolled out of my closet. Picked it up, went to put it back, walked into my closet and put it on the shelf where it was previously. When I walked out, I went back to playing, but in the corner of my eye, I noticed something strange. I turned to look at it, and it was a pitch-black, tall and skinny humanoid figure. It was hunched a bit because it was too tall to stand up all the way. It was just stood there menacingly. After some seconds of us just staring at each other, I guess it just hit my 5-year-old mind that this thing isn't supposed to be here. I quickly ran out of my room and ran into my older brother's room and stayed there. At least until it was my bedtime. Then he forced me back into my room. I laid there, trying not to fall asleep. I was so scared of that thing. But eventually I did end up falling asleep, and when I fell asleep, I had a dream I don't remember. But I remember waking up terrified. I was so scared I went into my parents' bathroom and slept in the bathtub. My parents weren't home at this time, and they were away for a few days. I don't remember where they went. Ever since then, I've been having nightmares and sleep paralysis. But the odd thing is, I only have the nightmares and sleep paralysis when I sleep in my bedroom. When I sleep anywhere else, like the couch, my parents' room, the guest room, and my brother's room, it doesn't happen. When I have these nightmares, they take place usually in a darker version of my bedroom, and it's like I'm stuck in one place and I can't move. I also see that thing I saw, the black figure. It just stares at me until I wake up and have sleep paralysis. When I have sleep paralysis, I'm unable to move at all, and that includes opening my eyes. Like I'll try to open my eyes, but I can't, and I'll feel a weight on my back. I sleep on my stomach. I'll hear a voice whispering, but I'm never able to understand what it's saying. I'll also hear what sounds like a broken music box. It'll be playing on repeat, but it sounds old and broken. I'm also able to feel something touching me, like scratching or pinching or choking or even stabbing. It's like someone is wrapping their hands around my neck and trying to choke me. When it's stabbing, it feels like something's trying to cut my neck open or shoving an object into my neck. Whenever it happens, it always tries to hurt my neck like that's the only place it goes after. Today, as I'm writing this, I've had the most terrifying experience with nightmares and sleep paralysis. I just got done studying and decided that I was going to take a nap. Originally, I planned to sleep in the guest room since I've been sleeping there for about a year now due to my sleep paralysis. My parents wouldn't allow me to, said I needed to get over whatever fear I have of my bedroom. I tried to nap on the couch instead, but again they wouldn't let me. So I went into my room, tried to sleep, and eventually I did fall asleep. I experienced the most terrifying thing ever. I woke up in a dream, and I could immediately tell that it was a dream. It's never happened to me before. I was in a dark room that looked like my bedroom. I heard growling sounds. I was trying to wake myself up, but the growling sounds just got louder until I woke up. And when I woke up, I realized I was having sleep paralysis and got scared. I heard that broken music box again playing, and it felt like I was about to cry. I felt that same weight of something sitting on my back and hands wrapped around my neck and starting to choke me. I also heard a voice, but it wasn't the same whispering voice. It was screaming at me, saying it was going to kill me and that I wasn't welcome here. I needed to leave. This went on for over a minute, or usually it lasts 20 or 30 seconds. Never happened for this long before. When I finally was able to move, I got up and ran to the guest room immediately and started crying. I really don't know what to do, and I've tried explaining it to my parents, but they don't believe me. They think I'm making it up for attention. The only one who believes me is my brother. He slept in my room once just to see if the same thing would happen to him while I slept in the guest room. And as expected, it happened to him too. At this point, it's official. My room is being haunted by some demon. Like, what do I do? After this, I'm never stepping foot in that room unless that's absolutely needed, and I'm never sleeping in there ever. My brother offered to help me move my stuff into the guest room this weekend, which I'm thankful for, but the only issue is convincing my parents to let us. My grandpa left a message on our mailbox after he passed. So my grandpa died in the beginning of September, and due to past events, my mother didn't have much contact with him. He was still calling me every now and then, catching up about how I'm doing. I hadn't seen him in over 2 years due to COVID and the strict rules from the nursery home that he was in. which I still feel bad about. Not your fault. I was the only person that he was most proud of. Same day we went to see him one last time. First strange thing to happen is my mother woke up in the middle of the night, 7 hours before his death. Thought about him. She was sending me pictures saying how we look alike. Fast forward in November at his funeral. I was lowering the urn in the grave and it started raining. But it only rained in about a 5-meter radius around his grave for about a minute, nowhere else. With that all being already odd, one day after his funeral there was a voicemail left on our mailbox. It didn't show a number, just that there was a voicemail left at around 7 p.m. the day after my urn was buried. My mom played it and couldn't believe her ears. It was the voice of my grandpa. He said, "Hello, Anna." My mother. "You don't have to call me anymore, I'm already in bed. Goodbye, and until tomorrow." We know it was him, it was his raspy voice, the sounds he was doing, everything sounds so real. His voice sounded tired, like he was going to rest. Really can't wrap my head around what happened, but it was so beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time to hear him say goodbye. I saw a white ball of light burst right next to me. No clue how to explain this. I live in a house with a 2 garage door. Both are attached to each other, divided only by a brick column. One is large and fits 2 cars, and the other is a small single car. My cousin often comes over at night. We'll pull up 2 chairs in front of the closed 2-car garage door. We leave the small 1-car garage door open to go inside to access the garage interior, or go back into the house. My house is on a cul-de-sac. It's about 11 p.m. and it's pretty dark as all the neighbors have gone to bed and there really isn't a street lamp. Nonetheless, cousin and I love sitting in the driveway chilling and talking in the dark in front of the closed garage. We've had a running joke in my family that my house is haunted. There's been a lot of weird encounters, like my older sister seeing a woman in white sitting on the steps, my dog refusing to go upstairs and staring at the same spot on the steps, and other weird but probably easily explainable things like the doors shutting on their own. Nonetheless, this running joke has existed for years. On this night, my cousin and I were talking about the paranormal, and that's when we mentioned the joke about my house being haunted. That exact moment it sounded like something crashed into the garage door. It wasn't like something fell inside the garage, but like a chair was literally thrown at the interior garage door. Frozen for a few minutes, myself and my cousin plucked up the courage and went in to investigate the garage. The lights were off inside, which made it even creepier, but we flashed our phone flashlights. Everything was in order. Nothing had fell or moved. We went back outside to sit in our chairs, by this point very creeped out, mind you. Now this is when things get even weirder. As I stated, the large garage door is closed and we're sitting in front of it, the small garage door is open, and this is what we've been using to access the inside of the garage, like I said. About 2 minutes after we sat back down, in the pitch black opening of the small garage door, a ball of light burst through. My cousin and I were petrified. We both had no clue how to explain this. There's nobody else awake and there was no light sources in the vicinity. It was a pitch black night and my garage and house lights were off. Till this day, I have no clue how to explain a white ball of light bursting less than a few feet away from me. Anybody have an explanation for this? Ask Reddit. I live in a house that only has a master bedroom, a smaller bedroom, and a small bathroom at the top of the stairs. The 2 bedroom doors face each other, maybe 7 or 8 feet apart. I'm the only one who lives on the top floor. Everyone else stays on the ground floor. I always got a weird vibe from the bedroom across from mine, so I always keep the door shut. One day about 2 years ago, I had come home from college at the time. I decided to take a nap. I remember laying down and falling asleep rather quickly, but something felt wrong. I sat up and noticed that the door to my bedroom was open. The door to the guest bedroom was also open. I watched the doorway for a moment like I was waiting for something. I didn't even know what I was waiting for, so I waited, and surely enough, this thing bent itself down to look back at me through the guest bedroom doorway. It was tall, way too tall for the size of the room. I only remember it having antlers and being very dark and shadowy in form. Also, its eyes. Its eyes were a very muted red tone and flat, like there was no other shape or features of its face. I felt like it wanted to come into my room, but for whatever reason it couldn't, and it was pissed about it. We never exchanged anything verbal, but I remember calmly looking at it and reminding it that it was not welcome in my room, much less my house. I knew it was just waiting for an opportunity where my guard was down. And then I woke up. Both the doors were closed, everything was fine. I was spooked to hell and back, burnt so much incense I thought I was going to smoke out my entire family. Haven't seen or dreamt of it since, but lots of guests I've brought into the house do not like that room. Whatever it was, I hope it's gone for good. Tattoo Studio Haunting. David the Piano Man. I've been wanting to share my experience for a while. I own a tattoo studio, which is ground floor of a 6-story building. We have a staircase in our area that goes to our kitchenette and bathroom. The bathroom has a small closet in it. It's just used for old furniture. The building was built in the early 1910s, and there were buildings there before which were demolished. We've been there for just over 3 years, and so many things have happened. I am an avid believer in the paranormal, and things I've seen are amazing. The building was home to a piano company, and had one of the biggest reinforced steel beams in our city as the pianos were held on the first floor. Weird, right? Not really. When we first moved in, I got a horrible vibe from upstairs, our bathroom and kitchenette area. I always felt eyes on me, and that I was intruding. Our fuse box is at the bottom of the stairs, and when my husband was getting it turned on, just using his phone torch, he saw shadows darting across the top of the stairs. Fast forward to a month into opening. I saw a man standing at the top of the stairs. He was wearing a top hat, a suit, and had a mustache, probably about 60 years old. He was there like an almost shadow mist and then disappeared. I didn't get any horrible feeling from him, just that he was watching. Going back to the bathroom closet, there's always a presence in there. One day I had finished in the bathroom, went to close the door when I saw a little boy who had a pesky blinders hat. He had shorts and a tartan shirt on. He giggled, ran away, and disappeared. I ran very fast down those stairs. We have things like pens being thrown across the studio, unexplained noises and footsteps. We had a new person start at the studio, and she asked how much history we knew about the building. I said I knew about it being a piano company and about the steel beam, but that was about it. She did some searching, pulled up an image of the worker who ran the piano company, and golly gosh, it was him. The man I saw at the top of the stairs. It was through and through exactly him, down to the way his mustache sat and what he was wearing. Absolutely crazy. His name's David, so I guess now we have someone to address if we hear or see anything. Things have started to get worse, with shadows being seen downstairs, reflections in the mirrors, cupboards opening, and more sounds being heard upstairs. I don't believe we're in harm's way, and are always respectful to David and whomever else is upstairs. Thinking about installing a camera in our kitchen area, but I'm also quite scared to do so. David the Piano Man keeps coming back. Light being. Did I see Jesus, an angel, or E.T.? This happened at my family's house in Peru when I was 16 years old. I'm 40 now. Before I went to bed, I remember saying to myself it would be amazing to see God. It was just a quick thought. I didn't focus or obsess on this. I was just a regular 16-year-old. That night, I had an apocalyptic dream. I'm not religious in any sense, and hardly even know much about religion or spirituality back then. In my dream, I was with my dad, several strangers on a boat waiting for the end of the world. We told ourselves it had something to do with the sun. We looked up at the sky while slowly rowing. The sun started growing and growing massively. It almost looked like it was going to pop, and everything in my peripheral became brighter and brighter and hotter until the end. I woke up to a completely dark black room. It was about 4 a.m., not even an inkling of light. When I looked to my side, I saw this being of light observing me. I looked at his face. I suddenly screamed in fear, and as I did that, I saw his mouth open in terror as well. He looked scared or surprised, and he levitated a bit off the ground. I quickly turned on the light and turned it back off again. He was gone. I couldn't believe the look of fright that being had when I noticed him watching me. It felt like he was showing me that dream about the end of the world. Maybe he wanted to communicate with me, but I cut it off. The being looked like pure light, similar to a hologram of whitish-bluish light. He was wearing a robe, from what I could tell, had long blonde or brown hair and a beard. I kept this experience to myself, and I've never told anybody about this. Does anybody have any ideas what that was? I've thought about it throughout the years, and I think I'm mature enough to try and communicate with him if I ever see him again. I was just a kid the first time. Anyway, any thoughts or advice on what this could be would be greatly appreciated. My encounters with a dark entity. I've only really talked with my mom and one friend about this. I'm 24 now, but the first thing that ever happened was when I was in 7th grade. I was at school, and my friend saw these scrapes on my upper arm. I didn't even notice them before. It was 3 lines, perfectly the same length and width. It looked like a deep cut, but you couldn't feel anything at all on my skin. My friend said something like, "That's some evil shit," or something. I went home, and later that night I ended up crying and freaking out to my mom after driving through Google searches telling me it's a demon scratching at my soul. Time goes on and it's forgotten about for the most part. Moved to a new house across town, and just a few years later the same 3 scratches appear in my hands. Yet somewhere different, but it was the exact same scenario. Freak out a little again, and same as before, time passes. Now what I'm about to say is hard for me to even just type out on my phone. It's tough. Sometime around my freshman year of high school, I was taking a shower at my house. I was the only person home. The bathroom door was locked, nobody but me. It was a hot shower. There's a lot of steam. I get out of the shower and I see the mirror above the sink and get the living shit scared out of me. What I see is a large empty hourglass with complex drawings all around the outside edge of it. Every single line was so perfectly straight and no lines crossed over each other. It looked as if an artist had been working on this and I was in the shower. Can't remember what the images around the hourglass looked like, but it was maybe comparable to Mandarin Chinese in its form. I sat in the bathroom and stared at this for a while and eventually wiped it off. This experience, especially the mirror part, is still haunting my thoughts, and I don't know if I'll ever get a straight answer that makes complete sense. But it's so true that spirits, ghosts, and entities, whatever you call them, are so real. The mirror images I saw was the last experience I had along those lines. I know hourglasses symbolize time and death, and that's really about it from my knowledge. Another thing to add is that my mom told me just recently that the night I got those first scratches, she said the day before she's found some creepy dead animal in the backyard that she couldn't even tell what it was. The one friend I told all this to came up with the idea that the demon was haunting me died while I was in that shower, and the hourglass or images in the mirror was what was left of it. Emotional attachment. This happened to me when I was about 13. I was with my native side of the family learning about the spiritual past of the family. That's when I felt this major gut feeling. We were outside in the back patio and it was getting pretty dark as we were out there for a while. I could feel something standing on the other side of the fence behind where I was sitting. The feeling got worse to the point I started to feel nauseous. Out of nowhere, genuinely within a split second, I started sobbing, like scream crying. I always pictured the spirit as a woman. Felt like a woman's pain and yearning. I don't know why, it's just been, what's been shown to me. I was a little on edge beforehand, but not nearly to the point of bursting out in painful emotion like that, especially in front of people with no trigger. I had no idea what was happening, and they brought me inside. I was with my 34-year-old cousins, and, gave me one of my late aunt's old stuffed animals. The second I held it, it stopped. I've always had a very strong connection to her, and I hadn't even known it was hers until afterwards. When they gave it to me, even I thought, really, a stuffed animal? I've always been sensitive to energy, especially as a child, but that's the most it's ever attached to me, by far. They, my cousins, they talked about it with me and they told me that they felt it outside the fence too, before I even told them I felt something there. They just didn't want to scare me. Later they had told me they had a salt ringer on the property, which would make sense as to why I felt it directly on the other side of the fence rather than any closer. They had explained to me that empaths are like a bright light shining in the dark space, draws things to you. When a spirit has that much hurt, that much emotion, and no way to express it in the physical realm, they pass it on to you. Never really found anything to explain it, but I also know how I felt, and there were too many confirmations that it wasn't just in my head. Weird encounter on a website. Probably not paranormal. Let's find out. So I know that it's probably not paranormal, but more strange, weird, or odd. I just thought that it'd be nice to share this information because I don't really know what to think of it. I got pretty spooked out. To add some context, and it's going to be quite cringe, I'm sorry, I was 11 or 12 at my friend's house after school. We used to love creepypasta and always joked about it, and we thought, oh, LOL, let's have a little chat with Ben drowned on Cleverbot, haha. We knew it wasn't real, we were just annoying trolls and were so bored we wanted to do something thrilling. But we're not accepting anything, really. It was just a random Friday before weekend. But it also was snack time, so my friend made herself a sandwich while I started to chat. So if anybody knows about the Cleverbot hype, it's so easy to get weird answers from the bot that's related to the creepypasta, like, I'm Ben, you shouldn't have done that, typical stuff. But when my friend got back with her snack, the next text from the bot is your friend enjoying her sandwich? Or something along those lines. But it specifically mentioned my friend and her eating a sandwich. We jumped out of our seats, we thought that we got hacked or something, we tried to dig deeper but never said anything funky again. The Ben drowned communicating from Cleverbot thing is clearly just an internet legend, but boy, to this day, we don't know what happened. I wish I took a picture, but at this moment, my skeleton jumped out of its body. Encounters in bed when you're not asleep. I've had a number of things happen, especially since my cancer diagnosis. I'm not taking any hallucinogens, and I'm not half asleep when things happen. I'm definitely awake, just in bed. I've had my foot grabbed a couple of times, hearing someone walk around her bed when my husband is either asleep next to me or in the bathroom across the hall. I've had words come into my mind through voices which aren't mine. The other night I was thinking to myself and heard the words, "Tell Catherine," in a man's voice. Then 1979 popped into my head, and 2 years ago my mind interpreted as he was born in 1979 and died 2 years ago. I've also seen a figure of a young adult male I didn't recognize standing beside my sleeping husband before disappearing a second later. Now and then I get very vivid dreams from having a full catch-up with my deceased loved ones, although this has only happened twice. I'm interested to know if others have had similar experiences. These are usually around 3 a.m. and the grabs and walking at 6 a.m. Can you help me with this? I don't know what to think. So basically I have Tourette's, as does my dad. I have a specific tic that goes like, "Jack what?" which is fine since I can't control it. My dad and mom left for work and my little brother just got picked up for his taxi for school. I just finished washing my hands when this happened. I ticked the "Jack what?" tick, and my dad just stood on the stairs and said, "Another Jack what day?" and I almost screamed. I didn't because my dad's really good at sneaking up on me, but I would have heard the back door open. We don't use the front door because it's too much of a bother to unlock it. But the thing that weirded me out was that since my dad has Tourette's, he knows that I don't like people commenting on it and vice versa. So he never talks about it. He was really smiley and stuff, but my dad doesn't smile that much unless my mom or my siblings do something smile-worthy. It felt really weird, uneasy around him at that moment, so I told him I was going to go to the toilet. I sat there for about 2 minutes before opening the door again, and he was gone. Our stairs are really creaky, so you'd be able to hear him leave. I'm writing this in my room, and it happened about 10 minutes ago or some shit. I'll provide a screenshot of me asking my mom if her dad, they were at work. For a while after I saw the thing that was obviously not my dad, I stayed in my room for about half an hour, and I was on a call with my friend. I didn't feel safe. After the time I spent in my room, I had to leave the house to get a haircut, and luckily enough, my dad's a hairdresser. I told him about my experience and asked him if he felt anything while it happened. He shrugged, and I decided to say something completely stupid to which he held absolutely no purpose. My dad has a horrible sense of humor, remember this. As in, not dad jokes, but as an example, I have possible Gilbert syndrome or symptoms of jaundice, so I'm a literal Simpson most of the time. So he points out yellow stuff and then points at me. So I said, "It even had your hat and everything," which literally meant nothing. He replied with, "Couldn't have been my hat, I was wearing it." Then he laughed. So the main reason I'm writing this is because something happened again. Right now as I'm writing this, I'm watching TV and I'm on my bed, and it's 7:33 a.m. My dad's asleep, so is my mom and my siblings. I know this because literally 2 minutes ago while writing this, I was making breakfast and checked on everyone. Before I toughed it out and went to make food because I was hungry AF, there was scratching at my bedroom door and knocking. It said something like "Wiki." My morning alarm is clearly jealous of the thing I have with my bed, and laughed. Didn't sound like my dad's laugh, but it sounded like an absolute crappy version of his voice, just like it did the last time. I didn't reply. I'm so glad I have a lock on the inside of my bedroom door, because if I didn't, I think it would have got in. Stayed silent for a while until now, and it's 7:45 and it knocked again. I'm really scared, so I'm just messaging my friends about it. Just something to lighten the mood. The conversation between me and my friend. Me: "Hi, you up?" Friend: "No, I'm asleep." Me: "Okay, well, you believe in ghosts, right?" Friend: "Are you hearing stuff again?" Which I find very funny since we snap each other and write the words and pictures and we both look tired AF. Help/advice would be much appreciated. Heart emoji. I like the idea of a hairdresser with Tourette's. Don't take it the wrong way, I just like that. See ya.